The day has finally come for Myles Garrett. He's tired of losing. He wants out of Cleveland, officially requesting a trade. Who should be interested? What are the team fits, and how much would it cost for one of those teams to pry Myles Garrett away from the Cleveland Browns? Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there. Thank you so much for stopping by. Make sure you hit that thumbs up so we know that you're here today. And welcome to the new listeners. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedon NFL. Terms and conditions apply. All right. The statement has been made and it is official, Matt. And I will read this statement from Myles Garrett as it has hit on Monday morning now. And man, with some big trade news in the NBA, and now we might get one of our own here in the NFL as far as star players potentially on the move. Myles Garrett had this to say on social media. As a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl, and that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett, signed MG 95. Myles Garrett, number 95, reigning defensive player of the year, has requested a trade, man.
I think he's the best defensive player in football. And trust me, that doesn't sit well with my black and gold brethren. I always am a little afraid when I say that on the air around here, but he is a remarkable football player. And I know we'll talk about potential team fits. Every team on the planet should at least have the conversation. Yeah, I mean, it's rare that somebody like this becomes available. He mentioned Canton. He's going to Canton. I mean, he's going to be in the mix for Defensive Player of the Year awards going forward. Now, I've always thought, though, from a Browns perspective, though, because of the massive mistake they made with Watson, this might be a move they have to make. You know, I mean, there's been a lot of talk of they might run it back with Cousins. Well, I wonder now, if Garrett's gone and you trade him for picks, why would you bother to go in the Cousins route? I mean, it has a ripple effect through the entire team. You know, like, obviously you're not going to bring back Nick Chubb. I mean, I'm talking about a total youth rebuild, tear this thing down, get as many picks as we possibly can. You already have an extra pick for Amari Cooper, which is, you know, small potatoes compared to what you'll get from Garrett. And if they do it right, and it always seems like this team is rebuilding and they've been perennial losers, but I think it's the only way to get out of the Watson mess, you know, is he's probably never going to play for you again. Basically tank for a year and accumulate picks like crazy.
So here's what gets difficult. Then if you are the Browns and you're kind of in a mess and this is going to signify a rebuild, the Watson thing, you screwed that up. You have to figure out quarterback. And then, you know, your biggest building block on defense, which was the thing that you could hang your hat on with this team. And that's, you know, scuffled a little bit last year as far as defense goes, but Myles Garrett's still that dude. He's your opportunity to start rebuilding. So it's definitely a lever you pull and you have to start rebuilding. And the more you get for Garrett, the easier it is to rebuild. But the question becomes, okay, do you try to attach Watson to Garrett or do you get the picks for Garrett? Because you can't do both. Do you try to allow Garrett to give you some Watson freedom, and then you're really on a blank slate there? Or do you say, well, the Watson thing's the Watson thing. We'd rather have picks. So we'll figure out the Watson thing and let that death die slowly, and we will get as many picks as possible. Because I've heard the idea that they might want to try to attach Watson to Myles Garrett, but you're not going to get picks in that case because you would have to give a team picks to take Watson.
Garrett's going to be such a cap hit, hard to get under the cap type guy anyway. I think it really limits who you can talk with if you're going to attach Watson. I mean, I think it might go down to one team then as opposed to 12.
One team,
you know what I mean?
They're like, pull it off. And so here's the other thing. So now you're talking about teams limiting, and we'll talk about the teams. But this is a scenario where the return might not actually be that huge because it's not just any team that can go get Myles Garrett now, because Myles Garrett is going to have some say in where he wants to go. Right?
Of course. I assume he's going to go to a contender. I don't think he wants to go to the Patriots, who have a ton of cap space.
Right. And so now, if you're limited to the teams you can talk to, well, then some of your bargaining power goes away for what you can ask if you are the Cleveland Browns. So I wonder if it won't even end up being that much, because in the end, Myles Garrett essentially becomes a free agent and says, well, I want to go to this team. So figure it out with this team.
Back to your original comment about, attaching Watson. I've heard some people in the know say that if Garrett aside, if I came to you and said, what would it take you to take Watson off my hands? The starting offer would be, I need that top 5 pick you have right now. I mean, that might not even be fair. That top 5 pick is almost the equivalent to that much cap space headache. So the way I would handle it, and this is kind of something that just popped up, is I think I eat everything. I think I flat out tank, which usually is not my move. And I'm trading Batonio. I might trade JOK. I'm gutting it, and I'm getting Arch. Right. I don't want to settle for Ward or Shador and put him on an awful team and lose like crazy and just repeat what we've done every year. The long list of quarterbacks we've gone through. Everyone's seen that jersey with like 20 names on it.
Yeah.
I want to totally bottom out, have a ridiculous amount of picks, eat the cap space on Watson, the best of my ability now, and own the 2026 draft and hopefully hit some dudes in this draft. Draft Abdul Carter. That was the top 5 pick.
That was the very first thing I thought of, because my mind usually goes to the draft because that's just who I am. The first thing I thought when I saw this is like Abdul Carter. That's the plan. You trade Garrett, you start rebuilding the defense instantly, and it's all about the 2026 draft for quarterbacks. Yep, that's it. That's the plan. That is
I'm offering Denzel Ward now. If I'm really because the other thing is the division's so hard, the conference is so hard. I don't want to be stuck in no man's land. I mean, I could probably try to piece this thing together with Cousins and try to keep my head above water, but you're not going to beat Burrow and Lamar, and the Steelers are better than you, and you're certainly not going to compete with the Chiefs and the Bills. My only shot is have maybe 5 first-round picks over this year and next, or something along those lines. 2 or 3 of them high, hopefully, and 1 of them a quarterback, hopefully, and a lot of 1-year deal free agents and stuff like that, just to fill out the roster and hope you found somebody. I think it's a gut job. The more I think about it,
and we'll see if they take it that far, if they're willing to listen to more than just Myles Garrett as far as their veteran players go. But they probably should, and that's probably the best plan of attack for the Cleveland Browns.
He kind of made that decision for them, and frankly, it might be the right one, where they may have screwed it up if they're like, well, we'll run it back with Garrett and win 8 games with Cousins and max out our credit cards even more,
Okay. So what are the team fits then for Myles Garrett, and what do you think that cost might end up being in the end? We'll take Watson out of it. You're just trading Myles Garrett for picks. What's that going to cost one of these teams that might be a fit for Myles Garrett in the coming weeks. Next. This episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. And here's how easy it is. You post your job, new LinkedIn features that like helping you write job descriptions, quickly get that job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. If you add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach at LinkedIn to find those qualified candidates, no wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. It's interesting because we talk about tanking and we talk about the 2026 Browns. You have the first pick in the draft. Maybe it's a quarterback. We'll see what it is. This was an 8-year cycle of the Browns doing that. Yeah. They tanked and got the first pick in the draft, and Deshaun Watson was one of the quarterbacks in that draft. Mitch Trubisky was one of the quarterbacks in that draft. Patrick Mahomes was one of the quarterbacks in that draft. They said, nope, Myles Garrett, generational. We're going to go him at pick number 1. Mm-hmm. And they started the process. And 8 years later, hasn't quite worked out. So tear it down and start it over again. You know, the cycle begins again. And, you know, they had some playoff teams. They kind of got close. They could still never figure out quarterback, by the way. I do want to say, because I say tank, I just actually this weekend was talking about this because you and I, Matt, are not shocked that Myles Garrett wants out, right? And we've talked about how there was some rumblings that this is a possibility. And I've been kind of joking on Locked On 49ers about this for about 8 years. I say Myles Garrett was born in Arlington, Texas. Went to Texas A&M. I always say bring Myles Garrett home because in my mind, in my heart, he's always been a San Francisco 49er. Because do you remember the game against your Pittsburgh Steelers, week 17 of the 2016 season? I think it was like January 1st, 2017, right before the 2017 draft. The Steelers were already in the playoffs. So they started Landry Jones at quarterback. Okay. And it was Browns Steelers. It was the most comical, hilariously awful game I can remember seeing. And if the Browns won this game, the 49ers were going to end up with the first pick in the NFL draft. Okay. The Niners ended up with the second pick. But in this game, I don't know if you remember it. The Browns went up early. Landry Jones throwing interceptions. He throws a pick six, what should have been a pick six. I don't remember who the defender was, but one of the DBs for the Browns intercepts the ball, takes it all the way back, dives into the end zone, gets hit, fumbles, ends up being a touchback. So points off the board. They missed a couple field goals. Isaiah Crowell, fourth quarter, end of the game, last minute or two of the football game. Isaiah Crowell at the goal line. Browns have an opportunity to go win the game. Fumbles at the goal line. It was just a comedy of errors over and over and over again. It was like, are they purposely losing this football game? Neither one of these teams wanted to lose the game. I could not believe it. Like, you literally fumbled away 2 touchdowns at the goal line in the same game the Browns did to earn the right to draft Myles Garrett. It ended up going into overtime. And then I believe it was Landry Jones to Kobe Hamilton, maybe was the game-winning touchdown pass. Yeah. I just watched this recently. I don't remember all this, but I remember how hilariously it was.
But you're on the edge of your seat thinking the Niners might get number 1, right?
The Niners going to get number 1, which is hopefully Myles Garrett, right? And so it ended up being the Cleveland Browns. But I'm going to throw the 49ers in there as a team. Bring Myles Garrett home. There's one team that could use him. A contender. They need to figure out what's going on the other side of Nick Bosa. I would send Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you.
Every team should be interested, even those, unless and even giving up your guy that you're going to give potentially elite money to a quarterback. I would still rather have Myles Garrett than that.
He's that good. He's that special. He's in his prime. He's 100%. couple things. You spun it back to your team. I'm going to spin it back to my team for one reason, because I know we do have a lot of Steelers and Niners listeners.
Yep.
This is why you don't tank, in my opinion, though. Like I keep hearing now, the Steelers are in no man's land, which they might be. Trade Watt, trade Cam, trade Minka. Go get the first overall pick next year. Okay, well, there's no guarantee you're going to get for number one. First of all, you may end up winning a game or two more than you should. But I don't think it's ever okay to say losing is okay inside the walls. Once you have painted the walls that color, it's really hard to get it back. And I know the Steelers are in middle of nowhere, but losing's not accepted in those walls by Cam Hayward and TJ Watt. And you would have to go find new leaders and build that infrastructure. And maybe it never gets you the Super Bowl, but it's not fantasy football. If you're around a building like I am all the time and you go 2-15 and all your leaders are gone on other teams winning, it just manifests itself. It eats your soul. And it's really hard for someone to rebuild what has been built by, frankly, Chuck Noll, a million years ago,
And if you ask the people in the building in Pittsburgh, and you talk about painting the walls, right? And if you ask the people in Pittsburgh, what's the color of those walls? That you might as well paint the yellow and black. You might as well paint it orange and brown, right? Because that's
right.
That's what
not who we are. We're never going to be. That's never okay. We're never going to condone that. Anyway, I think the opening bid. Let's say it's a contender. At least it's a 500-ish team or better. You better come to the table with 2 firsts. As an opening bid. If it's like the Lions or the Chiefs or the Bills or some really, really good team, I might ask for 3,
Yeah, because those are late picks and you're getting better. It's,
yeah.
You get Myles Garrett, they're more than likely to continue to still be late, right? And potentially if you're the Bills, it goes from 29 to 32.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a longer exercise, and I know people listen. This is when we talk about potential fits, I always go division by division. This team makes sense, these don't, And I think that's probably the right way to do it, because I started writing down names and then I just didn't stop.
First of all, if you think you're a contender, you're probably going to at least have the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of divisions, we can take out the Steelers.
He's not going to go to the North.
The Ravens,
no way.
We can take out the Bengals. So
right.
The Browns aren't going to do that, as crazy as they are sometimes.
I think the Bills are the only team in the East. I know they have cap issues, but we've talked about, they need a closer. That might be the one that puts you over the hump,
Love it for the Bills, especially another heartbreaker.
Yeah.
They're
the Von Miller move, but better.
Yep. They're in the right spot to make that move, I think, from a organizational perspective, from a mental, psychological perspective, to go get over the hump and do whatever they have to do, especially drafting as late as they are in round 1 right now. And okay, how do we find that closer? Well, here it is. 2 firsts, 2 late firsts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really see a fit in the AFC South. Maybe the Colts. It's not what they do. They have a new defensive coordinator. I don't think that, and I don't know that he'd be thrilled to go there. Yeah, I don't see a fit in the South.
Please get me out of Cleveland so I can go to Indianapolis.
All right. That doesn't, it's moving the deck chairs around. I think the West is really interesting. The Chargers could afford it. Khalil Mack's a free agent. Wow. But I don't think that's their plan at all. I think they plan on using it on wide receivers and other things. I think you have to throw the Chiefs in the mix.
Yeah.
It's not fair to the rest of the planet, but how could they not? Especially if he has a lot of say here.
Right. And how many teams are on his list? It's okay, give us a list of 6 teams, right?
KC's going to be on it.
Right. Yeah.
They're definitely going to be on his list. I don't think the Raiders would be interested, but maybe they're looking at this thing going, we'll trade Max Crosby for 80 cents on the Garrett dollar.
A way that,
a consolation prize. Or,
But again, one of the losingest teams around in recent history. So probably not on Garrett's list.
I don't think Garrett wants to go there, but I bet they're just watching it saying, wow, if Garrett got 3 firsts, maybe we can get 2 firsts,
interesting.
For our guy. In the East, in the NFC, I think Washington might be very appealing. All of a sudden, do I want to go play with Jaden Daniels?
Yeah.
NFC seems easier in the AFC. Eagles seem like a stretch, but they're probably on his list.
And they're a team that figures out how to make deals like that happen.
Right.
You
Maybe
can't
they
exclude
move
the Eagles ever.
As I say, they have to be in the mix, and I'm sure they're on his list.
Right.
I don't see the other teams.
The Eagles are one of those teams that have enough extra young talent, even though they're contenders, that they would be like, okay, well, here's Nolan. Here, let's help you rebuild on top of it. So, like, here's Nolan Smith and
our first
round pick, and then here's a 2/3 or whatever.
Right. And we'll make it work, and our owner will pay whatever we want. So I don't think you can exclude them. I don't think the Giants or Cowboys. The South is interesting to me. I don't think he'd go to the Panthers. The Saints have no chance. Yes. But the Falcons or Bucks, you could do better from a winning perspective, but they should definitely be having that conversation right now. Atlanta hasn't had a pass rusher ever.
Finally figure out the pass rush. I could absolutely see Myles Garrett looking at Atlanta thinking this is a young up-and-coming team that could be competing. Like, they're not the beacon of they are the team right now in the NFC, but certainly I think they could be an interesting kind of a dark horse team even. And Tampa.
And they've been an aggressive organization. Both those teams actually have been pretty aggressive. Now Cousins' contract might screw you up on trying to land Garrett, but I think the NFC North, all 4 teams should be in. And frankly, the Lions, that would be the Bills' move. Put him opposite Hutchinson.
Right.
I think the Packers should go harder than anybody. I mean, we've talked about they don't have a closer. They're kind of like Buffalo too. Like they have really, really good players, but they don't have a great player. Could that make them a true contender or the best team in the NFC? I think the Bears is appealing, kind of like from a Washington perspective. Like this is a good young coach, quarterback. I would be intrigued. Probably not the Vikes, but I threw them in there anyways just because they're close. They don't have a lot of cap space and stuff, and they have their own fish to fry.
Right.
The West, you mentioned the Niners. I think they should at least kick the tires. If I were the Cardinals, I'd offer you a lot. I don't know that he's super psyched, but I'd offer you a lot.
Yep. Rams, that's in their DNA.
It's in their DNA.
I don't know if it's the right fit for them because they've kind of that's one part of the team they actually have figured out with young talent.
Yeah.
And
I think there's a better chance they trade Stafford and sign Darnold than go all in. But I don't know. Who knows? It's their DNA, but I don't think that's where he lands.
Yeah.
Seattle, I'd kind of get to.
It's a lot of teams.
Just named like 15 teams.
Half the league. Let's half the league. I think we can whittle it down slightly further from those teams to the most likely. Smaller list of teams here for Myles Garrett. And do have a little topic here. I want to talk about Chip Kelly. Interesting move coming back to the NFL to be offensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks, and the big game is almost here. There's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports with over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded. Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action, and here's how it works. It's easy. You're just playing against the projections, the stat projections at Prize Picks. You pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard. And pair that with one more correct pick, and you are cashing out. So aside from Mahomes and picking the more than on that 1 yard, pretty easy there. You could be looking at the more on Travis Kelce receiving yards, or the more for a quarterback's passing yardage or touchdowns in the big game. So what's not to love there? It is super easy, and there's tons of promos as well, like the super sweet Millie Winners big game lineups. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Run your game. This episode is also presented by Game Time. Looking for tickets for your next big event, maybe some last-minute tickets to the big game next week even. You can find phenomenal seats and last-minute deals, including all the biggest games at Game Time. Whether it's concerts, comedy shows, sporting events, theater events, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache at times, but with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. So let me tell you how Game Time Picks works. With Game Time Picks, The app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings, especially for huge events, like if you're going to go see a game in a 60,000 seat arena. I've been using Game Time picks. I've been using Game Time for a while. I love it. I've found tons of baseball seats. Baseball pitchers and catchers about to report, by the way. It's already almost baseball season now that the Super Bowl comes and goes. And I love using it for going and catching my local San Francisco Giants. I've used it for concert tickets near me. Got a phenomenal deal, half price ticket price for a concert just a couple of months ago, and could not have been easier. So if you're ready to take your event to the next level, get the next tickets to your next favorite event, go download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so half the league should have some sort of interest.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you filter, who are the true contenders that have the ability to make this play for Myles Garrett that might be on Myles Garrett's list? I've come up with probably 4 or 5 teams that I think are the most likely.
Okay.
Yeah, we kind of touched on them in the AFC, and I think
They'd be on his list too, you think?
Right, these are on his list as well, and you got to filtering those two things. Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs. Right. The last 2 teams that were in it in the AFC, I think that would be Myles Garrett's at home making this decision, watching those teams play football while he's at home. Right. And while he's deciding what he wants to write in this message to the world.
Sure.
I would say teams like the Baltimore Ravens, obviously, in the division. Cleveland's not doing that.
Can't imagine it would happen.
Right. And then you go to the NFC, and as fascinating as the Eagles are, I don't think they're as likely.
I don't think that's their missing piece, or I think they just need to maintain what they're doing, but they'll have a conversation.
You have to go to the Lions, and I think it's in their DNA to be aggressive as well. So that's 3. I think there could be more potential NFC suitors. I think the Browns would probably feel better sending him to the NFC, even if it's not the biggest deal. They would sleep a little better at night, maybe, if that was the case. I think the 49ers are an aggressive organization. They get involved when good players are available. They got to figure out Brock Purdy and pay him a lot. They're paying a lot of stars. So I think that's less likely than maybe some of those teams.
I don't know how they'd make it work.
I think they would have the conversation for sure, though. And
I keep going back to the Packers, but that's not how the organization operates.
They're very much a let's draft and develop organization.
Right. They don't have an owner.
Yeah. Could the Bears make that big splash too?
I think the Bears makes all the sense in the world.
But they're not like the – here's the other thing. So, like, if you're Myles Garrett, he would probably put the 49ers on his list. Like, what are the traditional – because he's been with the Browns. What are the franchises that have a tradition of winning? Those are the names he's going to put on his list. So he might have like the 49ers on, but not the Bears, even though I think the Bears are a pretty good fit,
But they don't ever win anything.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the list starts.
They have the resources to do it, though. Like Chicago should call the Browns right now. Here's what the 10th pick and next year's first, and we have all kinds of cap space.
And that's where a team like, and actually in a down year, the 49ers have the 11th pick. So they might have an advantage, right? If let's say if Myles Garrett has 4 teams on there, 2 of them in the AFC, 2 are in the NFC, and one of those NFC teams is the 49ers, and their pick is 15 picks higher in the first round this year than the Lions or whatever, that gives that team a pretty big advantage. So if the Bears, if the Bears was on the list for Myles Garrett, they immediately have a pretty big advantage because they have a higher first round pick in the year where what their pick is going to be.
Yeah, I think the Bears makes a ton of sense. I mean, whether he'd be interested in playing there too. I mean, I always think about their fields a little softer, but so is Cleveland's. So what? He'll produce. Whatever. But he's dealt with weather, blah blah blah. I don't know that he has to go back to Texas or anything like that, or warm weather. He's played in Cleveland and excelled. Yeah, I think Green Bay, that's a piece he needs, but I don't think that's how the organization's wired. I wonder if Harbaugh's talking to the Chargers, though, going, dude, we can get Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
I mean, they have not a reasonably high pick, but of course, if you're the Browns, you're going to think next year's first, even if it's the Bears, is probably going to be a playoff team.
Yeah. Eagles have to be in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
They just have to be, even though I don't think they're as likely as some other teams.
Yeah, I tend to agree. You can whittle it down, but there's, the Tampa and Atlanta and some of those teams we threw out there certainly should be calling or putting a package together.
Real quick, though. So you're Myles Garrett. Who's on your list? Is it a big list or is it a small list? I probably have. Here's the thing, and this is where it gets interesting. So it's like, if I'm Myles Garrett, there might be 3 or 4 teams on there.
It might be as short as, here's my list: the Lions, the Chiefs, the Eagles, and the Bills.
Right, exactly. Maybe that simple. Yeah,
it might be that simple. Like, oh, the Niners signed fine, and but they got their issues. I want to go to one of the best 4 or 5 teams on the planet. You're not going to send me to Baltimore, so those are my choices. I want Kansas City or Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
there you go. Still like the Bills the most.
Me too.
I don't know if cap wise,
that's tough
with the Bills, but
I bet you could restructure Allen. He's about that point. I know you can restructure Allen.
I don't think Myles Garrett's one of those guys who are like, oh, I can't go live in Buffalo. He doesn't seem like that type. Yeah.
Seemed to enjoy his time in Cleveland, despite not winning.
Chip Kelly,
I like this,
coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders. I want to hear why you like it, because I hate it.
I just think that the Raiders are super interesting right now. I mean, I think that they kept their D coordinator. The Carroll hiring is really interesting. I was not a fan of Kelly at the NFL level, but people do talk highly of him. I don't think he's going to try to run the Oregon offense where they, snap the ball every 3 seconds. I mean, you just can't do that with a 53-man roster where you don't have 5-star recruits everywhere. My hunch is he's just kind of learned his lesson. I just think the Raiders are super interesting this offseason, and they haven't been for decades.
I love it from a let's watch how this goes perspective. I think this is exactly the opposite of what the Raiders actually needed, though. They needed more of like, let's develop an NFL stability and culture here. Chip Kelly had no answers in the NFL. Like you mentioned, the go fast thing, like clock mechanics even don't even allow you to do it. So he got to the NFL, he had no advantage anymore. And that was pretty obvious. Like one of the worst football teams I've ever seen was an under-talented San Francisco 49ers offense coordinated by Chip Kelly. It's just, okay, we're just going to run mesh concept all day long. It was bad. It was really bad. And this is not a great, you go from talent that Ohio State has like
great, they're pretty good guys too. Yeah.
Top 50 this year, right?
Right. And they have the best receiver in the country who's 18.
Yeah, exactly. And another guy who's going to get drafted high. So I don't like it from it becomes a carnival at a certain point. We're like, okay, now we're just throwing famous names on the wall. Even what's going to pick.
Yeah.
And Chip Kelly had no answers in the NFL previously. So I don't
Great
know.
point.
I don't know where he's going to come up with the answers now.
And I don't know what even type of quarterback he wants.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like, what does it even look like?
Yeah, I don't know what his quarterback of choice is.
So, yeah. Chip Kelly, welcome back.
It wasn't pretty the first time around. Or
I like it from let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
Because I have no skin in the game perspective. Hate it for it actually being something that's like a long-term. Who knows? Maybe this is like Chip Kelly's a long-term replacement plan at head coach for Pete Carroll.
I think that's something they need to think about after the Carroll hiring, but I'm not sure that's him.
Head coach of the offense kind of thing is maybe what we're looking at here with Chip Kelly. I don't know.
I think I get that feel that he's the head coach of the offense. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. Let us know what you think. Get those questions in for this week's mailbag. No doubt we'll have more information on the Myles Garrett saga as it continues. Of course, it is time for Super Bowl 59 as well. We got to talk Senior Bowl and NFL draft. So tons of ways to attack this thing as we go through the week and into the offseason right here on Peacock and Williamson.